Steve Pagan. He favors the city Measure S. Steve is registered civil engineer. He is project manager for the city of Campbell. He retired from the city of San Jose in 2017 after a 21-year career. And he was in the environmental services and public works departments. He worked for 11 years at Barry Swenson Builder as project manager. And he is a graduate of Gunderson High School, and he has a BS in civil engineering from San Jose State University. So help me welcome Steve Pagan. Well, I already introduced Shane, Patrick Connolly, so it doesn't need another introduction. So let's get started. So we'll start with each of the speakers having 3 minutes to make their cases. So we'll start with Steve Pagan.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak about my support of Measure S. So Measure S will update the city's charter that covers the procurement of public works contracts. Measure S will increase the formal bidding threshold for these contracts from $100,000 to $600,000. So currently, any project over $100,000 must go through a formal bidding process and be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, put those in quotes. The formal bid process can take upwards to 2 to 3 months to complete. Measure S will raise this limit to $600,000, which means projects over $600,000 will continue to be bid through the formal bidding process. More importantly though, projects under this $600,000 threshold will be bid on a less formal basis that is currently covered under the San Jose Municipal Code. This less formal process will save staff time and money and will allow a greater number of projects to be bid and awarded. This measure will also index the $600,000 threshold to inflation, as it currently is not right now. So for comparison, the city of San Francisco has their formal bid limit set at $600,000, and San Diego uses a $500,000 threshold. So this puts us in line with them. Measure S, another aspect of Measure S is that it will modify the design-build-delivery process. Design-build is a form of project delivery that is currently used for projects, for large and complex projects over $5 million. The city awards a design-build contract based on qualifications and experience. The monetary price is negotiated later after the bidders have been ranked by qualification. Measure S will lower this limit from $5 million to $1 million, thereby allowing more projects to be considered for the design-build project delivery method. The $1 million threshold is allowable under the Public Contract Code and is already used by the state of California. This change will provide staff with a more flexible design-build model in order to deliver projects in the $1 million to $5 million range. Measure S, another aspect of Measure S is that it will allow the use of best value contracting. With the exception of the design-build process, the formal bidding process involves selecting a contractor based only on the lowest price, without consideration for their experience or qualifications. Measure S will allow qualifications into the bid award process. And these qualifications include the safety record, past project performance and experience, labor compliance, demonstrated management experience, and financial condition. Bid packages will be evaluated and ranked by the city based on their qualifications without knowing their price. The city's bid review panel will assign qualification score to each bidder and then factor in the contract price. This will determine the lowest qualified bidder. This is currently used by the city of San Francisco in a UC system. So this just puts San Jose in line with other agencies. And lastly, Measure S will update bid advertising. Currently, the charter requires that projects be posted in a newspaper of general circulation. This is a dated concept with the advent of mainstream online advertising platforms, and Measure S will just remove this requirement to advertise in print paper.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Steve. Shane?
Well, Measure S does have a lot to like in it. As Steve described, increasing the city's ability to use money-saving design-build contracting, increasing the dollar limit before we have to go out to formal bidding, instead of the more, and using instead a more informal process to get through quotes, for example. And you know, I think he was being generous when he described the formal bid process as taking 2 to 3 months. We've known that it to take as long as 9 months. It involves numerous city employees as well, and their time and pay. And not only is it time consuming, it's costly, and depending on the department, the cost of the formal bid process actually gets wrapped into the cost of the project, because the city has to charge back the resources used to the projects. And for small parks projects that are right on that $100,000 cusp, adding the formal bidding process actually makes the project much more expensive. So we could get a lot more done with less money where the formal bid not required. Getting rid of the print advertising, the inflation indexing, that's excellent as well. But that being said, the measure does contain a fatal flaw. And these are flaws that could cost us much more in the long run. And it could make it so our parks monies don't go as far as they could, and other monies in the city. And the flaw is what Councilmember Camus calls the best friend bidding provision. Changes the criteria that's been in place for decades for bidding on large projects, the lowest cost responsible bidder, to best value bidder. And while best value can be used to select a bidder that has a great track record of completing projects on time and under budget, with the fewest change orders, for example, it could also be used to define costly criteria or define out criteria that keep people accountable. So on any given Tuesday, a future city council could change the labor compliance part of the bidding criteria to include labor provisions pushed by special interests. Something like requiring all projects to go through hiring, to go through Union Hall, which would increase the cost of the project from 12 to 20%, according to various studies. And now Councilmember Camus also, he actually attempted to eliminate that provision in the measure, but his colleagues rejected that proposal. Future city council could also make the criteria so loose that a council majority is able to select the most well-connected contractors, regardless of the cost to the taxpayer. Perhaps the contractors who donated most generously to their campaigns? I don't know. So for this reason, this one critical flaw, we would encourage you to reject Measure S, but if it fails, we would like to then see the city council come back, make the critical change to that area of the measure, and place it on the 2020 ballot. It does cost a little more to put it on the ballot, but it's the price for not doing it right the first time, and it could cost us much more in the long run if you don't do it right the first time.
Thank you. Let's move on to the written questions. If you want to write a question, Peter has the index cards and the pencils, and he will forward those to Matt Mahan, and he will pose the questions. So Matt, you have any questions?
Thanks. Yeah, I have one here. Keep them coming. First question from the community is informational, so you should each respond to it if you can. The question is, what percentage of projects currently are bid on an annual basis, and how do we quantify the cost of time savings, or the value of the time that can be saved?
I think Steve has a report with him, so that's good, because there was a report issued on this.
Indeed. So the percentage of projects that are currently bid, I mean, the latest information we have is for fiscal year 2016-17. There were a total of 87 major, and this is major construction projects that were bid at that time. And of those 26%, which would be probably 21 or 22 whole number, were under the 600. We're under a value of $600,000. So those projects that were bid formally at that time under the costly and time-consuming project delivery model could now be delivered in a shorter amount of time because it's under the formal bidding threshold. So now, the second part of the question is how to monetize that savings. I can't really. I don't know how that would be done. I'm stumped, but there's definitely a time savings because the formal process for award is very set in memo writing. I mean, the bid award process, the bidding process is already 2 to 4 weeks long anyway. But there's a written process in writing the memos, and the memos are written by numerous departments in the city, including the attorney's office, the clerk's, public works, the client department, which may be parks, and everyone has a say about how the memo is crafted. And that is a very time-consuming process. The informal process doesn't involve that much extensive memo writing. It's less formal, and the award is at the director's level, so it doesn't even go through council. So there's a time savings all the way through the process. So I'm not sure how to monetize that.
Thanks. Shane, do you want to respond?
No, he's right. It's difficult to measure. It's an opportunity cost. We have a very low staffing level at the city for a city our size, and so if somebody isn't doing one of these memos, they'll be doing something else. Hopefully, that will add more value to the city, moving another project ahead more quickly.
Okay, next question is directed to the pro side, which is how do we ensure that the new standards for project bidding don't lead to favoritism between the council and specific contractors?
Politics, I'm not sure. Now, from a project manager's perspective, we kind of focus on delivering a project, and then when it comes to award, that moves to council for the formal award. So how, from a project manager's perspective, I'm a little uncertain how that would be done, how to keep council from being unduly influenced by members of the community or advocacy groups. But the process for awarding a contract is done at the project manager's level, and advocacy groups are not included in that process. They just don't have a seat at the table. They're not part of the process, and they really can't ask to be in the process because it's very inappropriate. And in my time with the city, that hasn't happened that I'm even aware of. So I don't see how it would happen at the project manager's level. At the politics level, I don't think I can really address that.
Yeah, and the concern is that without protections in the actual measure itself, the shenanigans, if you will, can happen at the council level, and because they have the power. If it's not written into the measure, they have the power to change it on any given Tuesday.
Okay, we have two specific questions I'm going to ask at the same time. One is about the RFP process and where it will be published, if not in print, it will be published on the web. The other is about surety bonds, and are contractors required to obtain them, which in itself would be a pre-qualification. And the point is, if they had to obtain a surety bond, in theory, the city would be covered for subpar work, for example.
Yes. First question again, please. Just summary.
Where RFPs will be published. That's
Okay.
a request for proposal.
Yes. So our RFPs are actually all projects are already advertised electronically already. It's just with the current charter, the way it's written right now, we must also publish in a print paper. So with the advent of technology, all other city agencies were moving towards online publication, and the city was kind of forced to do that as well, because there are advertising platforms that cover multiple agencies, counties, cities, districts, whatnot. And we became a part of that because those have large memberships, large contractor, general contracting memberships, so we get wider publication. But it was just archaic to continue to advertise in print paper. That just doesn't happen. In fact, contractors don't look for jobs in print paper anymore. They do go online. Second
part of the question is about surety bonds.
Surety bonds.
As a prerequisite.
So as a pre-qualification, that's actually already a requirement for all projects. Contractors must post a bond for all projects, a performance and a surety bond for all projects that are currently bid. So that process is already in place and is used extensively for all projects.
And does that protect the city against cost overruns or subpar work?
It does. It protects the city against non-performance. So if the contractor pulls off the job for some reason, such as they go into default, they go bankrupt, and that has happened on a couple of projects. It's not frequent, but it does happen. When they go bankrupt, the city seizes that surety bond or goes after the surety to have them complete the balance of the project at their cost.
Shane?
Yes, and we do have an electronic bidding platform, which we have a large base of subscribers to. We also do the notices to anyone who's signed up for an extensive email list that the city has. Some notices, you could receive them yourself if you signed up on the city's website to receive those. So there is an extensive electronic communication, and like Steve said, it also goes out to very specific groups that are involved in contracting. So it reaches their audience of people who contract, including small mom and pop contractors and minority contracting businesses and women-owned contracting businesses. So.
Ed, any other question?
One last question, which actually relates to the last measure as well, which is a question about Valley Medical Center cost overruns. Was that related to design build?
I don't think I can answer that one. That was a county project. I don't know what their project delivery method was. I don't know if our previous speaker was here. In my time with Barry Swenson Builder, I did work on a hospital project at O'Connor at one time. Now that was not a design build project. In fact, it was just a radiation therapy unit. The project was designed by an architect and we constructed it. The Valley Medical Center building is a very large project, and I know the contractor that was working on that job. It's very possible that was a design build project just because of the size of that project and how extensive it was. It would be very difficult and challenging for a design firm to design that and then put it out to bid. I mean, that would just be, the potential to be loaded with change orders is very high for something like that.
And I also cannot speak to it with a complete knowledge. I believe it was design build. However, a lot of the change orders that were driven by the customer, if you will, the county management of that project. So.
That's it? Any more questions? Okay. Okay, let's thank our speakers. No, let me see. Before we thank them, let's have them summarize their positions. We give them 2 minutes each to summarize their positions with Shane going first and Steve concluding.
Okay, I can make my summary very quick. There's a lot in this to like. There's a fatal flaw. And the fatal flaw can cost us a lot more than the things that we like will save us. And until that's fixed, we encourage you to vote no, but we also encourage the council to bring back a fixed version of this without the fatal flaw for your consideration.
Thank you. The one tool that would be most helpful right immediately is to raise the formal bid threshold from $100,000 to $600,000. That is probably the most key component of Measure S. This single act will allow many more projects to be delivered to our community in a much quicker fashion. And this is because the informal bid process is a much more efficient process. 20%, I mentioned this earlier for fiscal year 2016-17, but 26% of the projects delivered during that time were under $600,000, and all of those were delivered under the formal bidding process. But those could then be delivered, those could have been delivered under the more informal process that would be provided under this measure. The design build threshold being lowered from $5 to $1 million is also very good for our community. The city recently completed a $2 million project that was not eligible for the design build model. And due to numerous challenges with that contractor, having the ability to do this project under the proposed design build model of $1 million likely would have avoided many of the issues that came up. And regarding best value contracting, this is new, but it's an intriguing concept for the city. Although there may not have been an application for recent projects, having this procurement tool in the toolbox will allow the city to award critical projects to contractors that are not necessarily the lowest bidder, but are actually the lowest qualified bidder. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Shane. Let's have a change of panel.